All right, good evening and welcome. This is the Rhinebeck Board of Education meeting, Tuesday, October 22nd. I'd like to welcome our new board clerk, Donna Ellis, for her first meeting. Welcome, Donna.
Yes.
And we'll begin with the approval of minutes. I have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 8, 2013 regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Second. All those in favor? Motion passes. We have an opportunity for public comment. Any public wishing to make a comment at this time? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to reports and discussion. Marvin Krebs is here to discuss curriculum development in support of the Common Core standards. Marvin? Joe?
Sure. No, fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Am I on?
You are on.
Okay, let's go. I have had extensive conversations with the board subcommittee on curriculum with regard to Common Core. Particularly last meeting, we seemed to have a long sort of back and forth. So they strongly recommended that I do a kind of quick update for the full board. So what I intend to do is to kind of keep my remarks as short as possible. As you know, anybody who knows me knows that's virtually impossible. But I'm really going to do it this time. And then give you an opportunity to ask questions. If you see things that you think need to be covered in a more granular fashion, perhaps it would be wise to invite me back and I'll do something a little more formal. So I decided to start with an informal sort of overview of what we've done since, say, somewhere around last year to the present, and then we can sort of have a conversation about that if you want to ask some questions, and then if you need me back, I'll come with something more formal, I guess, some PowerPoints and documents and whatnot, because we're actually going to cover a lot of geography here in a quick time period, so there's no way I can drill too deeply into any of it. Otherwise, I'm going to be standing here for 3 hours, like I was the last time I think I stood. I don't think you want me. And these guys don't want to be here 3 hours for sure. So anyway, most of you know that the State Education Department, pursuant to their receiving the Race to the Top grant, adopted the Common Core State Standard somewhere circa about 2010. Somewhere around 2011, January, they took those Common Core standards and adjusted them and sort of what I would call New York Stateized them. They added some standards to them, subtracted some, changed a lot of language, and then said to the field, okay, go get it. And then they gave us a timeline around which they were going to start testing against those standards. So just to give you a rough idea, they said they were, January of 11, they adopted them, and then they said at the end of the 12-13 school year, they were going to administer the first Common Core Learning Standards assessments. So they essentially gave us one summer and one full instructional cycle to roll into the curriculum before they started testing. So that gives you an idea of the rate and pace at which things have changed rapidly and the kinds of things that we've had to do to kind of adjust. So that's what I'm going to talk about today at the 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high, to try to address that challenge. They also rolled over to Algebra 1, which is a new Common Core Regents exam, which will be administered at the end of the 13-14 school year. So they gave us 2 full instructional cycles to prepare for that one. And then Geometry and Algebra 2 will come in behind that. And then also the Common Core Regents exam for English Language Arts will be administered in grade 11 this year for the first time. And then we have successive years to get the intern and freshman class for this year ready to take that exam. So that's sort of the background for my remarks. There's a lot more detail built into that. That gives you an idea of, they adopted, they got the Common Core, they said when they were going to test, they developed the assessments, and then they said, you go align the curriculum. Now the next piece of that was they said, and using Race to the Top funds, they were going to create curricula in the form of modules and units and make them ready for the field. Well, as of less than 2 weeks ago, they were still adjusting those modules and those units that were supposed to be ready for the start of school. So even though they've been printed, they keep going through iterative development processes, which is what most curricula do. But in this particular case, there was sort of a high-stakes process because they gave us a short amount of time to kind of roll over and they didn't get their materials out. So we really didn't have a lot of time. We had to do a lot of speculating and tea leaf reading, if you think about it, in terms of, okay, what exactly do you mean by standards? Because remember, this is sort of some stuff that I see floating out there. The Common Core learning standards are not a curriculum. They are a set of standards by grade level, what I might call know and understand and be able to do statements at each grade level in math and English language arts and in history, social science, and technical subjects. So it was left to school districts to either adopt the state standards and curricula that they developed in the form of these modules and units, adapt those modules and units at the local level, or ignore them and write your own. So that's sort of the next level of context for my remarks in terms of what was available to us. They are, at the State Department, they are still rolling out these units. So we still don't have all of the modules and units for this calendar year, even though they're testing against them. So it's made some difficult going for us. So the way we decided to sort of attack this particular problem is this. We have a long-standing historical relationship with the professional developers that have been working with us in the area of literacy. And so we decided to migrate that project into a Common Core Learning Standard alignment because primarily we had to take the English language arts standards and actually build them out against social studies and science in the elementary school anyway. So it made all the sense in the world, given that they had the expertise, to tap into their expertise to write these units. So we elected at the elementary school to meaningfully engage the teachers in the process of writing our own units. So instead of adopting the state units that they had written in modules, we decided to work with them to create design specifications around the units and the lessons and engage the teachers in the process of actually writing those units ourselves using the rubrics that the state was using. It's called the Tri-State rubric, to evaluate the level of rigor and quality of those units to make sure that they were at least equal to, if not exceed, the quality of the state. So that's kind of what we did as a plan. We initiated that project in earnest as soon as we could after we found out in January of 11, as I mentioned, that these Common Core learning standards were now the rule of the land, so to speak. So during the summer of 11-12 and throughout the 12-13 school year, we had been setting up all these structures, getting the outlines squared away, trying to get the basic architecture of what the entire school curriculum was going to look like. So we had to bring teachers in, we had to get chart paper up on the wall and scope out the K curriculum, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, and then deal with all the alignment issues, deal with redundancy, take all that stuff out that was redundant, put in stuff that was missing, and then create that basic building level architecture, or map, if you will. Once that map was built, we then had those specifications built for each of those units at the grade levels, because now everybody knew what it was they were supposed to be writing against. And then we turned those grade level teams loose to write those things. They only had so much time during the school year, because you can't roll the sidewalks up in the 12-13 school year and have teachers just writing curriculum all day. So it was a process of continuing to teach what we already had in place, and then also developing these new units. So in the run-up to last summer, we had those folks meeting with our professional developer, meeting with myself, with Mr. King, getting ready to scope out this work for the summer. So we engaged virtually all of the Common Grants teachers in the elementary school over the course of the summer to do their work at that grade level. And we had record amounts of folks doing curriculum work over the summer. As a matter of fact, in thinking back about this for this purpose, I counted up to 90 teachers who were involved in some way directly with summer curriculum projects last summer. So it was a record amount of that kind of work to try to write these curriculum. So that's sort of the transition process that happened. So as of the start of school, every single one of the grade levels has at least their first unit ready to go, and they're delivering it now. Some grade levels have more of those units done than others, and they're continuing to work on them again as we are moving forward. The concept there is what we're going to try to do is have at least a full draft of the entire year's curriculum, K-5, with all that integrated stuff from science and social studies done by the end of this year. That's the plan, is to have a sort of a draft of that, with the idea, and this may be somewhat visionary and aggressive, but the idea is to have a penultimate version of that available by the start of next school year. So we're going to we have a sort of an idea of how we're going to proceed this year. We'll also have, at least to assist us somewhat, 2 full assessment cycles. So we'll have an assessment cycle from last year, we'll have an assessment from this year, and that'll give us a chance to do item analysis and some cross-checking against what we wrote to see if it's what it should be, because if you think about it, when you write curriculum, you're writing the itinerary, I should say, of what you think is going to happen, and then there's the diary version of that trip. And you've got to kind of keep track of what you're doing and then make adjustments accordingly based on how the kids respond. And so once you get that information, you can make those adjustments. So that's sort of what we're going to do at the elementary school. Let's see if I'm missing anything. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I would also say, though, in terms of curriculum work, it would be kind of false to think about it just in terms of the Common Core, because we engaged art, music, physical education, library in summer curriculum projects as well last year in order to sort of upgrade and refine and revise their work. And my office is currently, just so you know what we're doing, we're taking all that information that was given to us and putting it into master documents to prepare for publishable sort of penultimate versions of these documents as we can. So we're trying to work our way through that ourselves so that we can make them available probably on the website, so there's a little web presence, make them available for the board to consider and approve, just like we have in previous years. Some of it's just time consuming. Just to give you an idea, the current state of the elementary school curriculum, K-5, is 400 pages long and climbing, and as I said, I still don't have that document anywhere near finished, so it's going to take us a while to get that done. So that's the elementary school. Oh, one other thing. In terms of mathematics, we made a strategic decision, and we're going to need to monitor this very closely, in my opinion, to stay with Everyday Math, because Everyday Math went through a development process to align their curriculum with the Common Core learning standards in the advent that it was likely that most states were going to adopt the Common Core at the time. So we made a strategic decision to migrate over to that version of Everyday Math, which should put us, as I said, at the start of school, fully aligned with the Common Core as we started school this year. But in my opinion, I think what we're going to have to do is monitor the quality of Everyday Math and its alignment, just because we still, as I mentioned, we're not quite sure how, we know a little more from last year how the state is going to test this thing and what the kids really have to know and be able to do. And they found the test last year very rigorous and challenging, but please remember that the results of some of that data are based on kids not getting full years of instruction leading up to taking that test, because of my point about this sort of hard stop, hard start thing that they did to us. So we're trying to make a lot of curriculum moves and instructional moves in a very short time frame and engaging. See, it used to be, this is an interesting point, it used to be you could bring one teacher in from each grade level into a, matter of fact, I've done it in this room. So you've got 13 teachers working on a curriculum, and they're going to make decisions for everybody else. Now you have to engage everybody. You can't have individual teachers separated from the process now. So all grade level teachers have to be directly engaged in these processes. So it's a much more logistically challenging sort of adventure, if you will. Okay, so in Buckley Middle School, here's how that went. Remember I said at the state you were allowed to either adopt, adapt, or you could reject. So the English Language Arts Department in the middle school, again working in consort with our balanced literacy consultant, Mr. Kennitzer, and myself, made this strategic decision to adopt the first module and units for grades 6, 7, 8 in ELA, and they are piloting those modules as we speak this year. The expectation is they're going to finish this first module and units up somewhere in late November-ish. And between now and then, they're going to do some strategic conversation about, okay, so what are our next steps? How do we go? Because I'll tell you, a lot of that material that's getting pushed out is not that different than what we're doing in the elementary school. It's a work in progress. We're going to have to go back and look at it, ask questions about it. I'm already hearing that there are some things that the teachers say went very well and they liked it. They thought it was a good new step. There are other things that they think are just not going to stand the test of time and work, and so they're going to need to adjust it. So even though we're receiving these things from the state, they're going to need to be probably adapted in certain ways. So wholesale adopting is really out of the question from what we can tell so far, unless they do a lot of improvement on that on their end, and they're not improving it fast enough. So I think that's where we're at. So we're really making that strategic decision somewhere later in November as to where to proceed. The remaining modules and units to finish out the school year aren't even done yet, so we're still waiting to see what those things are going to look like for the whole school year. So that's what happens with the ELA. In mathematics, grades 6, 7, and 8 in mathematics are already fully aligned with the Common Core, and we're pretty confident that those folks have got that pretty close to right. We are quite concerned about the aggressiveness of this sort of what I might call ruthless rigor that's built into these math curricula now. So it's going to take some nuancing, and I was trying to tell the folks on the board subcommittee that these kids that are at these grade levels that didn't go through, let's say you're at the 7th grade, I don't know, pick something arbitrary. So you didn't go through a K-6 aligned math curriculum, and all of a sudden now you're going to walk into a Common Core Learning Standard curriculum this year. You're going to find that transition bracing and challenging, because there are a couple little things they built into the math curriculum that are concerning all of us in the field. One is they move from, sort of concrete, symbolic to abstract quite rapidly, and they also rely on recursive learning that assumes that you know something, so they give you a short amount of time to review and remember, and now you have to apply. And kids who are not used to being in a curriculum like that, who did not master precursor skills to be in that grade level, are going to find that kind of work very challenging in the early going. And that's in fact playing out right before our eyes. We're seeing that kind of challenging thing going on for kids. So there's a lot of nuanced tailoring that's going to have to happen during the pendency of this transition, in my opinion. And I think it's going to take some time. That's my prediction. Just because the state has run out ahead of us in terms of the assessments and the expectations for being there. We also have aligned the grade 6 and 7 accelerated program where they're currently piloting a new textbook for 6 and 7, and it seems to be good effect. It's coming back with a lot of positive feedback, so we'll continue to monitor that. But we feel pretty good about those kids being aligned so that by the time they get to 8th grade, when they go into integrated algebra 1, they'll be more prepared than the sitting 8th grade, which kind of brings me to them. Those kids are in a pretty distinct disadvantage compared to most of the kids I'm even talking about right now. I'll tell you why. They have to take the Algebra 1 aligned Common Core Learning Standards assessment the first time it's going to be given in early June, circa June 2nd or 3rd-ish, as I recall. Those kids had very little opportunity to transition, and they're accelerated. So even though they're accelerated kids, content and processes are content and processes. So they're finding this material very challenging because, as you might imagine, this continuum that I'm talking about, where they go from concrete to symbolic to abstract rapidly and expect that you have recursive skills, is even more pronounced as you get into the high school level, because they want you through a 3-course sequence of Algebra 1 geometry and Algebra 2, and you've got 3 years to get through them. So that's a pretty challenging thing for a 13-year-old to accept as a challenge. And they're trying to make those adjustments, but I want to let you know that they are aligned, but they're having some struggles with trying to make sure that it's calibrated well with the kids, and also adopting and trying to figure out what to do with the state modules when they're not particularly well fleshed out and written yet. So there's going to be some of that. There is a little bit of another caveat that those kids are at a disadvantage, which is the state. I find this personally a little frustrating. They're going to allow kids in Algebra 1 the opportunity to take the old Algebra 1, integrated Algebra 1, if you will, Regents exam that's based on the 05 core. So the one that was given last year, they will have that option to take later in the month if they want to, which would allow them to earn that Regents credit. If you think about it, that would bag their Regents exam. So they'll be able to take that about 2.5 or 3 weeks later. Those kids also, by state policy, up to this moment when I'm speaking to you, have to take the 8th grade math exam. So it is theoretically possible that the sitting 8th grade accelerated kids might have to take the 8th grade math test, the Common Core Learning Standards test in early June, and if they elect to, the Regents exams from the previous year because of the transition. My speculation is that the State Education Department didn't do much thinking about this in advance. So the field is sitting here waiting to hear, what do you plan to do about this and what do you want us to do about it? So far they've shown little interest in our program, so we'll see what happens with that. We also included in the summer projects social studies, science, music, art, PE, foreign language. Mr. McDonald revised the GTT curricula for grades 7 and 8, and then also wrote the curriculum for the Introduction to Engineering and Design course over the summer, and that course is, of course, out and being delivered based on the work that he did. All those other subjects that I mentioned, it might be worth noting that they actually took the time, particularly in the area of social studies and science, to look at the Common Core learning standards and say, well, where can we help with some of that instruction? And they built a lot of that kind of work into their own units of study over the summer too. So there's been kind of an integrated, coordinated effort to make sure that these lessons are integrated as best we can across disciplines, which has been helpful. So at Rhinebeck High School, as I mentioned, the Algebra 1 exam that will be given in June, we needed to deliver that Algebra 1 course. So in high school, they're delivering the same course that they would for acceleration in the 8th grade. So that course is sort of being delivered to the freshman class the same as it's being delivered to the accelerated kids. The ELA department revised and reviewed their 9th grade course, thinking that they actually do have a phase-in strategy for those kids. Those kids will go into a Common Core class. They're in it now. 9th grade ELA, Common Core aligned. Next year they'll have a Common Core aligned. The year after that they'll have a Common Core aligned. Then they'll sit for the Common Core Regents exam in English, what we would historically call the English Comp exam. That's a phase-in process for them. In the pendency of that phase-in, the sitting, what would be sophomore class and junior class, will be taking the old Regents English Comp exam until those other kids come through, at which point we'll sunset out that exam. So, yeah, that was pretty much a whirlwind through what we're doing. So what's next? Well, what we've been trying to emphasize here is let's stay focused on what we're here for, which is student learning, about supporting kids and creating instructional supports. So I think that's where the real smart money is continuing to stay focused on that as our core mission. I think using assessment data wisely and taking a careful look at what assessments we are using and using a rational process to either bring on or take out assessments so that we're using them smartly and not just assessing to be assessing, which I think is a big mistake. I think we also have to kind of reinforce this notion that we've tried to reinforce, which is, you know, curriculum writing, instructional delivery, assessment is the professional work of educators, and we're trying to engage them meaningfully in that. And to the extent that that's possible, we want them to be communities of practice in which they live and breathe this curriculum themselves. This is not something that's coming out of my office or it's not coming out of the principal's office. This is their curriculum as much as it is ours, because we feel like that has the double benefit of creating strong and deep curriculum, but it also creates strong and deep practice and, you know, professionalizes and raises the intellectual, you know, tone and tenor of what teaching is all about. So we're trying to maintain that under the pressure of this high pace to change, which is a challenging thing. And then I would just say that in this new world order of sort of what I might call whitewater curriculum development, you know, sort of moving all the time, looking for rocks and making sure we don't hit anything. I think what we have to do is remember that this is a continuous improvement process that requires that we continually reflect now and make adjustments, sometimes quarter to quarter, depending upon how kids are responding, sometimes year to year. So that's going to make it challenging in terms of the old way, because the old way we used to publish documents, print up a bunch of them and hand them out to everybody, and then they became shelf art shortly thereafter. Well, we can't live there anymore. The rate and pace of change is too rapid. The amount of resources are available. So we're going to need to find, you know, sort of digital platforms for all this to live on that people can access depending upon the stakeholder group that's involved. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Now it's your turn.
Lisa?
Marvin, we've had some implementation issues, obviously. You know, we heard about them towards the end of the last school year with the issues surrounding the state assessments, and I'm sure that other board members have had similar experiences to what I've had, having teachers say to me, well, we're implementing these standards, but there are some issues with the way they're written or what the state expects us to do in terms of teaching modules. And I'm just interested in your sense of how much of the issues that you talked about this evening are, implementing new standards and strategies issues, which just take time to work out, as opposed to issues that are more basic to the material or to the standards and the way that the state expects those standards to be met. Just a simple question.
Yeah, thanks. I like those. Brain teaser, we call it. It's probably both of those things, is the answer to that. The implementation timeline in and of itself and the radical shift from the old core to these new standards is a large shift. And I don't think anybody should underestimate how large the shift is. The Common Core expectations are more rigorous and demanding. The reading levels of the complex text at grade level are more sophisticated and demanding. The rate and pace at which kids need to learn things and the depth at which they need to learn them is more significant. So that's creating a challenge if you think about it, because now that's a rethink on instructional delivery. So now it's not just anymore about the content of what's written on a piece of paper about what kids need to know and be able to do. It's about how it's instructed in real time and the kind of pedagogical and teacher moves are made. And so I think that's causing some significant challenges. I also think that standards since the advent of the standards movement in the late 90s, really, those standards documents never come down sort of like Moses came down. We got the Ten Commandments, and by all rights and accounts, they seem to be pretty accurate when he got down. With educational standards, it doesn't work like that. The system digests these things and looks at them and says, wait a second, the research actually contradicts your whole theory underneath what you're saying about text complexity, for example, at each grade level. And so there's a rash of researchers piling into this thing, questioning some of this stuff. And so some of that stuff gets adjudicated over time in our business. So there's some of that other stuff we're talking about where some of these standards may not be appropriate for the grade level, or they haven't built into the scope and sequence the kinds of instructional times that we need. So they may be calling into question the very structure that a child is receiving education, or the sequence. Think about the 42-minute period in mathematics is as simple as low-hanging fruit for me, because I've lived this discussion with some math teachers. The state wrote these units and these modules predicated on a 45-minute instructional period with no time to review homework. Okay, so that's very nice that they did that. That implies or calls into question the master schedule. But again, as I mentioned, you can't roll up the sidewalks and tear the building down and rebuild it in one instructional cycle, nor can you do that to a master schedule. So here we are. So there's that kind of stuff that's putting tension.
I got an earful about that recently.
I bet you did. I wouldn't be surprised. And so we're trying to say to people as best we can, that's kind of why I was putting a plug in for this communities of practice idea. We've got to work together and learn together. I don't think we can back away from the challenge and just throw up our hands and say, well, the state education department's being ridiculous, because in toto, I think they're on to something. It's not okay for a kid to go through 13 years of school in public education and not be ready to go off to college if all things being equal. They should be ready to be there and be successful, and that's our charge. So then we have to accept that, but we also have to build a structure that creates opportunity for kids to do that. So I see that gear grinding, and we have a fair, I think the principals will nod to this, we have a fair number of meetings trying to say, okay, what are we going to do? We've got this problem, we got this problem, we got this problem. Tell us what to do. And sometimes we don't know the answers to those questions. Well, and if I told you we did, we'd get somebody else in the room and say, okay, what do we do when this happens? Is there an innovative strategy to handle this homework idea? How do you get 45 minutes of instruction in a 42-minute period of which you only really have 38 minutes to teach? So, yeah, it's a good question.
Can I ask a quick question? Could you just give us a very brief definition of communities of practice as a pedagogical model? It sounds as if it's really going to be important in terms of the Common Core standards being implemented across the curriculum.
Yeah. Well, this idea is really kind of, it's bandied around in a number of different little acronyms, you know? So professional learning communities is another way of describing that. I like communities of practice better. I don't know why. I'm sure they're any different from each other. I just happen to glom onto it, and so I like it better. The reason I do, I think, is because I think that any discipline, be it a medical discipline, a legal discipline, engineering practice of one sort or another, has a community of practice that has its own professional practice standards. It has its own code of ethics. It has its own processes and procedures by which it learns. And so I think there's a sense in which a community of practices has a standard set of practices that they follow, and then they also have procedures to go into sort of a learning loop together. And I think that's a critical part of that, is no longer can you have a teacher at one level who's innovating and seems to be doing better and then not scale that across. It can't work like that anymore. And so a community of practice concept kind of is sort of the opposite of that, if you will. Now you're not an independent contractor and the only thing you share is where you park. Now you're a member of a working community, be that a unit of analysis grade level, unit of analysis school, or district. Or for that matter, a whole community of practice that exists in this state that has come to identify, hey, this is what high quality education looks like at your grade level in your class with those kids. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Very helpful.
It's probably visionary.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you, Marvin.
My pleasure. Should any other things come up and you need me to come back and talk about something?
Yeah, we'll talk about this as an ongoing topic at the curriculum committee, and Martin's a member of that committee, so if there's a sense that we need to bring him back to address other specific issues, one of the things we talked about was talking about the professional development that supports all these initiatives. So that's a conversation we're going to be having over the course of the next few months, and in fact may be coming back to you if the curriculum committee deems it of interest to kind of unpack that for you as well. So you just have a sense as we're going along here as to what kinds of things we're doing, because just as we've I think invested a lot of time and resources into curriculum development, we've also put a fair amount of those resources into professional development, and teachers have, I think many of them have been very, very interested in going to various workshops and conferences to find out about what's the state of the art out there in the larger world. And even though there's a lot of people out there like we are kind of tripping over our feet trying to get it together, there's a conversation going out there, you know, in that larger community outside of Rhinebeck that I think many teachers are finding it helpful to be part of that conversation and bringing back ideas that are helping them here. So we're kind of doing this on the professional development side as well as the curriculum development. So they obviously work together hand in hand. So stay tuned likely for that one and other things as they develop, because you know we're still, and we talked about it jokingly a couple of years ago, but in many ways we're still building that plane while it's in midair. So that hasn't ended yet. Thanks, Marvin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so now we'll move on to principals' reports.
Good evening, everyone. So a few things happening at Chancellor. Most recently, wanted to give you a little update. Superintendent Conference Day yesterday, what we spent some time doing. Primarily, we spent the first half of the day staff work with a rep from NWEA who works on the math assessments. That's who we use. In our computer lab, focusing on a few things, generally focusing on deepening our knowledge of the assessments themselves and the reports that come out. Certainly identifying key reports that are available to us and how those reports will make instructional connections and obviously help guide us in what we're doing in the classroom. In addition, kind of taking the data that we get from that and setting up individual and class goals. So that was kind of the 3 and change hours that pretty much the entire staff spent time doing. And then in addition, the afternoon, certain people had student learning objectives to write from that data, and we were done with math assessments by then, so all that data was in. So teachers were able to immediately kind of take what they just learned and apply it to not only the student learning objectives, in essence that's a goal for the year, but also kind of take a look at what they're currently doing and know what those math and ELA, what that math and ELA data means. In addition, kind of bouncing off what Marvin just mentioned, there was also a handful of staff that was able to take some or all of that afternoon time and continue working within that grade around some of the curricular units of development and things like that. So that's primarily what we spent the day doing yesterday. Non-instructs were not in attendance. In addition, as I reported, October 9th, we had our 3rd grade safety day. Fire Department Smokehouse, the Art Association, and fire safety were 4 of the main items that we worked on that day from 9 to 12 with all 4 3rd grade classes. On October 15th, we had our Title I AAS Parent Open House. As I mentioned, I believe last time, something new we did this year, we folded in the Rhinebeck LLL program, which historically we do an open house with those families as well. Kind of worked with Wendy Brissy from the Rhinebeck to put that all together. Obviously updated our presentation specific to AAS and some of the very, things this year that were specific to AAS needs we had to address. So we had a chance to talk to parents about that. And in addition, I just want a little shout out about Fern Locks. That was kind of her first on her own kind of running the show. She did very well, and the AAS team helped out as well. So I just wanted to give her good props. It was the first time we put her in that position. She performed beautifully. In addition, grade 4 starts this week. You may have mentioned, remember I mentioned that Preventing Alcohol and Drug Abuse Through Primary Education program, 3rd grade, has gone through the program with Larry Miller, who partners with the St. Francis Hospital to bring that program to us. 4th grade starts this Thursday. We'll go into like early November, and 5th grade will finish up the calendar year, and then K1 and 2 will do what they've done the last 2 years, starting in January. So getting a lot of great feedback with that. I'll be able to give you kind of an update at the next meeting about how those, at least the older grades, this was really the first time they had an opportunity to see this information. In addition, I always wanted to try to give you updates as they come in as far as our partnership with the Rhinebeck Science Foundation and Rick Campbell from Bard College. You may remember I had mentioned last time, I think he had just visited some classes that week. We're doing a 2nd round of that November 6th and 7th. He'll be working with the teachers that have worked in that little cohort with him. And he'll be visiting the school like we did last time. At the culmination of that 2nd day in the afternoon, all the groups will meet, all the members will meet with Rick for a couple hours after school to kind of just debrief and talk about some next steps. I did want to give you a quick, just a quick kind of update of where we're at. The last time they met in October, which I don't think I had last time I spoke with you. They focused on, what they did was they actually took a look at, all the teachers involved took a look at Unit 2 in our Everyday Math program, 1st through 4th grade. And within the program, one thing we found that I think was a little bit lackluster was the extended responses that are embedded in each lesson, in each unit, which I think Everyday Math needed to do a little work on. So that was actually something that Rick and the team kind of brought those units together, took a look at those extended responses, because basically the goal of all this work with Rick is really to kind of create extended writing responses around math and science and other areas where it's found difficult. So in the time that he worked with those group of teachers, this need with the Everyday Math to kind of supplement what we're doing in there and kind of take those open-ended responses, and I use that term a little loosely the way Everyday Math used it, to make it better and create high interest for kids, get them motivated, get the teachers motivated. And one thing I wanted to mention about this is I think it was easy to think moving forward when we put this proposal together and started started working with teachers to find out who was going to work with Rick. It was kind of easy to know that, all right, once we get our units aligned with Common Core, and once we start talking about extended responses in these areas and get students motivated, that it would be easy to get students motivated about the writing. That was the whole point. The cool thing that's coming out of this is, in addition to that, the teachers are getting jazzed about it. And I think any opportunity we can do that within the confines of the Common Core, which is a wonderful document, but obviously we're working towards it, as you heard Martin say. I met with Rick this morning, actually, and him and I and Jen Hamoon just talked about some of that stuff, and that's something that's really motivating about this process. He also has this great way of, he's able to work with the teachers as kind of an outside consultant in the classrooms and observe them, which is sometimes difficult for teachers to do. So it's been a good partnership so far. The hope is that we'd like to move forward with extending this. Before I get to that, by the way, the last full Saturday workshop will be December 7th. I think we tentatively set that date. So that's kind of the third and final meeting of everybody together. What we talked about this morning was some ideas on looking to expand on this program, on this initiative to kind of build on its success. So possibly further developing the people that are already involved, maybe gaining some additional interest. I know we have another day on November 15th, I think, at Roy, which with RSF, similar to what we did last year with Rick, which, to be honest, that meeting was really what skyrocketed the motivation to get something like this going. So we'll see. We're going to at least try to keep the people who are involved in it moving forward, and we'd love to motivate some new staff members to get involved. So that's where we're at right now. I'll continue to give you updates as we meet. Really quick, in the past, out of Putnam Westchester BOCES, you may remember we had worked to get a lot of the science curriculum that kind of supplements what we're already doing. We used to work with that group. Now they're called Impact Education. And what we do is we bring them in to work with every grade, K through 5, at different times around things like Creatures Alive is when we work primarily with 4th grade, My 5 Senses with kindergarten, Web of Life for grades 1 and 3, the Water Cycle in 2 and 4, Pond Life for grade 5. So we've kind of planned in those units that we're talking about, integrating science and things, we've kind of upped this program a little bit. So what they do is they set up for full days, multiple days in our community room, and work with each grade around some science initiatives that are directly connected to the Common Core. So that's coming up. The dates are kind of spread out. I didn't bother you with the dates, but I'll let you know how we do moving forward there. And one last thing, certainly not least, Dr. Ron is back doing our Scientists in Residence program. This year, exploring the wonders of planet Earth, meteorites, outer space, and NASA human space flight. And I just wanted to read you quickly the program objective. I didn't want to paraphrase. To provide students with the opportunity to take a journey through a portal of science enrichment and observe, study, and learn about the wonders of Earth and space science. And this program augments the regular school science curriculum for each grade level. So it is very specific, expanded it a little more to work with the astrotechs in 4th grade, to do a lot of research projects, things like that. So I think we'll be setting up later this week, and I think Friday is the first day, and then it'll work through all next week. We'll have all the classes go through. And like I said, Dr. Ron works with myself, Mr. Worrell, classroom teachers to kind of supplement what they're doing and really pick up where they left off in the classroom. So glad to have him back. That will be from October 28th through November 1st. A few upcoming things I mentioned last time, still upcoming. November 8th, Dutchess County Dental Society Players presenting Happy Tooth, which is a dental health skit that is connected to our health and wellness curriculum for K1 and 2. So they'll be coming on the 8th. And PTA Fall Festival at CLS this Saturday, so please join us. Again, with my little guys. It should be fun. That's it.
Any questions? Diane?
Brett, thank you. That was quite an overview, and I really applaud the use of using our community resources, our universities and colleges locally, and it sounds like it's developed into a really nice relationship where coming into the classroom rather than having PD separately and sit-down place. So that sounds like
it keeps to be expanding every year, which is good.
Right.
Sign of success.
It's great. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of a National Science Foundation did a study years and years ago talking about when they paired up a grammar school teacher with a higher level of education math teacher, that the scores went up 15% just in 1 year, just by having that resource available. So
That's great.
it's, yeah, in this day of testing, that's a...
Yeah, well, luckily we work in we live and work in a centralized area where there's a lot of that. We don't,
Right.
we don't have to focus just on Dutchess BOCES, for example, or Brendan, Westchester, things like that, so.
I was wondering if you could follow up. Last week we talked a bit about the early morning enrichment program for math and how it's changed over the years. Can you sort of expand on how it's changed and what we could do maybe to bring it back to what it was once?
Yeah, well, primarily two kind of factors have I think, influenced the change. One, that program has always been, and any morning program obviously, has always been contingent on teacher involvement and their availability, and I think that's varied from year to year. We've had some consistent people who do it every year with us and who help me kind of motivate people to do it as well. It's interesting because that's one of the ones that's not so much of a staff proposal. It's kind of, we're going to do it every year, let's look at how we can use it. All the other ones are kind of, a staff proposal, I said people can go over it. This is usually, I kind of put it out there, say, this is what we're going to do this year, love to gauge some interest, let them know what you think, and then kind of go out there and try to kind of get people motivated to do it. It's kind of tough because we do it in the morning. I think that's a tough thing. So one, staff involvement. This time we have 4 staff involved. The other factor has to do with trying to utilize some of the monies we've had to focus on the kids that have the most need. So last year, I think it's the first year we kind of did it. It actually came out last year as a result of having less teachers, and so I met with those teachers and said, listen, so what could we do? And, we could certainly, in the past, we've opened it up to kind of everyone. I think the format in which we do the program hasn't necessarily changed, meaning we come in, we do kind of a survey, an attitudinal survey, we do a pre-assessment. Based on that, we start to see where the kids' needs are, and then based on how many teachers we have, we organize the groups in that way. It's always worked well that way. We do the same thing this time. The primary major changes we identified this year, for example, we identified students that were in 3rd grade AIS that went into 4th grade and are still not receiving AIS. So we invited the 4th grade AIS students, and then a few other students that maybe aren't getting that service but are on monitor or for whatever reason, worked with the 4th grade teachers to gauge the need, and then kind of created an invite list from there. Last year we had we've gotten more, but last year I think we had more students involved. It was a different group of students. I think we did 3rd grade last year, the first round. This year, if I remember, we invited 30, about half have been able to come. We sent out just last week a new set of invites. But the rationale for that is the fact that we were finding that we need more and more remediation as a result of many of the things that Marvin mentioned. And this was one way to kind of utilize those monies and the small resources of teachers who are able to do it in the most effective way. So, it's never cut and dry as far as, we're going to do this from the beginning. I kind of meet with the teachers, we figure out a need, and we've been trying to kind of try to focus on what the need is in math rather than kind of invite everyone and try to utilize the small amount of staff that is able to do it to the best of our ability. So that's been kind of the rationale the last 2 years. We do intend on, we have budgeting for, I am budgeted for a spring session, which we've always done fall and spring. It doesn't necessarily, it's not going to, like any other year, it's not necessarily going to just carry over what we've been doing in the fall. We'll kind of come back, reassess, see how it went. My goal right now is to get those kids who do need the most in to do it. But I think the morning time of day creates kind of an issue as well. So that's the rationale.
Laura?
So I understand all of that rationale, and I actually have 2 questions for you, but I understand all of that rationale, but a parent came at the last meeting and asked the question of the board, what is it that the district does to enrich the kids?
I met with him, said
You did? Okay, good. I'm glad she followed up. But what do you do to keep those kids interested and encouraged to press beyond their boundaries? And so,
her real question actually, when I sat with her, was actually about differentiating in the classroom. Because I thought the same thing, even from all the back and forth. I thought she had more of a question of just in general enrichment before or after school and stuff. She was actually much more. Her real question had to do with how do we differentiate in the classroom? How do we get to not only the kids that need remediation in the classroom, but also the other end of the spectrum, the kids who need to be challenged. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think, so we got to kind of that level of clarity when she sat around with me today. So we spoke more about that. She actually didn't want to hear anything about the morning enrichment stuff. But we did talk about it a little bit. But anyway,
well, just so in that vein, my kids did early morning math before it was a help program. And they enjoyed it, because they could actually see beyond just what they have to learn for each lesson. And so I think it's a valuable thing to keep kids interested and pressing beyond their more common boundaries in the classroom. And so if there are things that we can do to provide these opportunities, which
to be honest, I think there's an argument for both. There's a need for both. None of it's etched in stone, and I think it's something I can bring back to the group of teachers and say, listen, because that was a collaborative thing. It was never anything that I kind of made some sort of executive decision. We're going to go in that route. It was more the feedback I was hearing, saying, hey, this is another opportunity. It literally 12 hours of FaceTime with students that really need the help, which was why we went that route. I would say I'd be more than happy to open up that conversation because if we could afford to do both, or I had enough. It's more if we had enough staff to do both. I have a bunch of support for it. So there may be another way to this, and thinking in terms of catching up with the people who are interested in doing it and seeing. Where should we go from here? I mean, we'll always have that remedial route anyway if we open it up to everyone like we always did. So I'm open to bringing it back the way we did. It was just kind of something we thought, based on feedback from teachers and kind of a need that maybe we should entertain. But I'll say for the spring, let me have some time to kind of maybe grade level chairs is the way to attack that conversation with them first and from there. So I'll do that. That's a good suggestion.
My other question is to come back to the Rick Campbell PD. I think it's great. I agree with Diane. It's really nice to be able to engage people that are sort of objective and can help out and inspire. But can you sort of address what Marvin was talking about these communities of practice and these relatively small group of teachers who've become inspired by Rick? Can you talk a little bit about how you're going to try to expand that so that it's not one teacher, 5 teachers?
Absolutely. We talked a little bit about it this morning, and one of the ways is it's actually already kind of one of the things I mentioned this morning was it's actually kind of embedded in how all that reflection that we're doing. Those people are in many cases kind of going back to their group and say, oh, I tried this. Let's try to inject this. Especially, I think the timing is perfect because we're in the middle of developing all this stuff, so it's not like we're going back to something kind of finished and revamping it. So that's one thing that I've got a lot of feedback that people are doing and kind of letting them know. For example, some of the writing prompts that they talked about, and I know there were 2 first grade teachers that were there when they talked about all that stuff, came back and talked to the other 2 first grade teachers, and they actually changed some of the responses they're using in everyday math, for example. So that's one. That's just kind of already in-house. I think it's embedded in our practice anyway. The other, actually, it was interesting because we wanted to try to do this. It was fresh, our October faculty conference, which unfortunately we used for something else. It was supposed to be a roundtable conversation about exactly that and start to have, start to talk. So what I went went kind of back to the drawing board with a few of those teachers who were going to talk about what it was they just touched on and shared that conversation with everyone. We're going to be probably doing that in November. If I have, it's amazing how they fill up super fast trying to get everything done. So anyway, one of the things we didn't necessarily touch on this morning, but one of the things I'm thinking as far as getting people to really get motivated to want to be part of this is primarily those teachers sharing their experience, you know. Another thing, you know, it might be worth, because one way we gauged interest for this was Rick actually joined us at the faculty conference, did a little activity together. There was another thing I mentioned to him this morning, that was the impetus to get, in this case, Joan Berlin, who had gone to the Arroy, had kind of come back. We brought Rick in, and Joan kind of shared her excitement along with kind of Rick coming in and working with us. And that was enough to get, you know, 10 people out of the 15 we wanted to try to invite involved. So that was kind of the point of our conversation this morning, which was, what do we do to move forward and get people involved? It did ultimately, in all honesty, get down to just trying to figure out funding options and stuff like that. Because I think there's no doubt on my end, Rick's end, RSF's end, or my Bill, you know, any teachers that have worked in this with him in this initiative, that it's successful. We want to move forward. It's got some traction now. So the best way to do that is to share our experiences. So looking for opportunities to do that is primarily what we're doing. The other thing that when I just talked to Joan about this the other day, because that's another thing with her retiring, she really does want to help me kind of keep this ball rolling. And I'm going to be honest, I obviously did what I could as a principal, but she's the one who got, you know, people really rolling and motivated. And even a couple of people that maybe weren't going to get involved kind of went to them and was like, you got to do this, you got to do this. So I'm trying to build off of that, her, you know, fire, or whatever you want to talk, you know, describe it. To try to get the rest of the staff motivated. So I just personally think word of mouth. Another thing, by the way, that I haven't shared with staff yet, I don't have it with me, is Rick laid out like a 2-page kind of, this is where we're at, this is what we do. That was actually specifically addressed to me and Marvin. It's something I want to share with my staff also, like this is where we're at. Because another thing is at a granular level, everybody probably doesn't know to some extent what they're doing. They know there's an excitement, they know they see Rick in the building, they know, you know, it goes a long way that he's with open arms invited into the classrooms to watch and do what you do. And then, by the way, now everyone's going to sit in a room and talk about that. And it's just nice because he is his outside eyes. That's not an administrator, you know. And we can be as forthcoming and flexible and helpful as possible. But he's still an administrator. That's what it is. So. And he is too, just not here. So, anyway, to answer your question, I think word of mouth and providing opportunities. Like I said, October we kind of intended on doing that and had to push it aside. If we can have some time to spend on November 6th as a possibility, even to just open up the conversation, I'm hoping we'll be able to do that. If not, because it is kind of a loaded agenda for November 6th, my next grade level chair meeting will be when we start having that conversation. And letting everybody know now that I have an idea that I think we're all on the same page, we just don't know what it's going to look like moving forward, that we want to move forward with this, or who's with us. You know? And so it'll start with grade level chair if I can't do it staff-wide. It's just you only have those minimal opportunities to have everybody in the same room in a captive audience, and some things take precedent. So that's kind of my plan moving forward. And then certainly I'll catch up with Rick. We're going to get Marvin back in the loop. He wasn't able to meet with us this morning. And then go from there. So it's on the docket. Right now, that's about where I'm looking to go.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm actually wearing 2 hats this evening, my own and that of Dr. Davenport. He is supporting his students at the varsity soccer semifinal game this evening. And up to the minute report, they are up 3-0 as we speak. I told him that was really the contingency for me and presenting his report. I'm going to start the middle school portion of the report by giving accolades to one of my teachers. I think most of you, if not all of you, know by now that Kristen Koval has been named one of 18 teachers from 12 school districts across the lower Hudson Valley. And she was selected as part of the inaugural group of the Master Teachers program that the SUNY State School System developed. And the purpose behind this, and they've infused a lot of money into this program, in an effort to create a cadre of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics teachers that can serve as professional mentors and really content experts, engaging in all sorts of very in-depth professional development, either on their own and in conjunction with the next generation of STEM teachers. Participation in the program is a 4-year commitment. I can tell you that as of this morning, she did actually sign that contract. She doesn't know a lot about the program yet, but she's very excited about it. Has her first meeting to discuss it with the other teachers that were selected in this area on November 5th. So I look forward to updating you further as she begins her service in that program. And I will also say that of the initial, I believe, 77 teachers that were basically registered for the program from this area, we also had a runner-up who made the final cut, but was not selected as a Master Teacher Fellow this time around. So moving on, thanks to an Arts and Education grant, our 7th grade social studies classes have begun work again with improv artist Denny Dillon during the month of October on a project titled Playing Your Role in History. I've reported out on this in the past. It's a pretty extensive research project around the time of colonial America and the Salem witch trials, where culminating in students actually reenacting and acting out the Salem witch trials and demonstrating their knowledge and their research through an authentic experience. As I've spoken to this group in the past, we always look for opportunities to, again, to provide our students with authentic experiences and authentic audiences. And what better way to do that than to invite CLS's 4th and 5th grade students over on November 20th and 21st. So we're going to dovetail with their investigation and their learning about colonial America. They're going to come over and view our 7th grade students' reenactments of the Salem witch trials on those 2 dates. So that's the first time we're trying that. We're looking forward to it. Mrs. Cake's 8th grade ELA classes are going to hold their annual museum exhibit on Thursday, November 7th. This year it's titled The Refugee Experience, and this is a project and a program that she's done for the last several years. Those of you that have had students come through the 8th grade, you'll recall that in the past it's centered around the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, and it was an American Museum, Memory Museum project. Around that time, as we shift to the Common Core, the learning changes. We are trying to preserve as many of those teaching experiences that we valued in the past and apply them. So, again, we're using a different historical verse novel. This one titled Inside Out and Back Again by, and I may pronounce her name incorrectly, but Thanha Lai. So students have created refugee narratives. They're going to be on display for peer and parent review on November 7th in Mrs. Cake's room. So we look forward to that. The circus came to town this morning. Thanks to the PTSO, the 6th grade students will be working with members from the National Circus Project. Once again, this is a long-standing tradition at Oakley Middle School. I learned this morning that this is the 21st year that we've had this program on an annual basis. I have not gone through the class list yet this year, but I know that I believe it was either 4 or 5 parents in the audience viewing their students' performances last year have participated or had participated in the circus in the past. So it's certainly something we've had in Rhinebeck for quite some time. I was very tempted to invite them out to retain anything that they learned. All of our extracurricular clubs have held their initial meetings, are up and running. We've had outstanding attendance this year. Again, and I believe it's on this evening's agenda, with a favorable vote, we're hoping to add the Technology Club, an Anthropology Club, a Creative Writing Club, and a BMS choir. As of hopefully, as of this evening and within the next couple of weeks. We already have a number of students that are in I'll speak about one of those particular groups in a few minutes, but we already have quite a number of students that are aware that these clubs are coming down the pike and are very excited about it. I'm also happy to report that both the BMS and RHS intramural programs are up and running now. We've held a number of activities in both schools. And on the academic side of the shop, I wanted to mention that our grade level teams have begun identifying students, at-risk students, and all of our after-school extra help classes are going to be up and running either this week or the beginning of next. During the next few weeks, members of our support staff will be conducting lessons at all 3 grade levels about the Dignity for All Students Act and bullying and harassment. The PowerPoint that they're going to be using for anybody that's interested is going to be available online. I checked this afternoon, it's not linked yet, but either tomorrow or the next day, that information should be there should anybody wish to view it. Next Friday, November 1st, we're going to hold our annual Halloween costume dance. Again, students are excited about it because it's a Halloween costume dance. Those of you that know that one of the other long-standing traditions at BMS is the annual Veterans Day Assembly, and this dance also serves as a fundraiser by which we're able to donate $150 to 4 different veterans organizations in this area. So we're excited about that piece of it. Then following that, the following Friday, November 8th, we will hold our Veterans Day Assembly. It begins with breakfast, again, thanks to the PTSO, at 8 a.m. with an assembly that begins at 9 o'clock and runs until about 10:30. This year, our keynote address is going to be delivered by Austin Butler, a Rhinebeck alum, who was stationed over in Djibouti just this past year, and is going to come and share his experiences with our students and with the veterans that are present. In addition to that, I just found out this morning that New York State Senator Terry Gibson will be here to present and deliver opening remarks for our ceremony this year as well. And finally, on November 16th, the Rhinebeck Science Foundation will host the Discovery Festival. This year it's titled Design, Form, Function, and Fun, the Science of Design. And one of the things that I'm most excited about this year is that they're including a student design competition. And as I said before, when we talked about a technology club up and running, we've had quite an extensive number of students in preparation for this design competition for the Discovery Festival, working with Mr. McDonald 2 to 3 times a week over the course of the last 2 weeks, and they're going to be working all the way up until the 16th. In addition to that, we have student mentors that are coming in from Bard College and working with our students, grades 6, 7, and 8, on Friday mornings and afternoons. So very excited about that. Any questions about middle school?
There are some questions. The clubs sound really exciting. I'm glad to see the additions. A thought occurred to me as our student population is shrinking. The idea of the athletic programs competing with the after-school clubs for just student numbers seems wrong. Just in general, you should be able to play sport and be in a technology club too. So just an idea to throw out there would be, has anyone ever considered doing sports 4 days a week and having clubs 1 day a week so that we could continue to support all these as our student population shrinks and students could do both?
Sure. I will tell you, and although we have a number of students at the middle school level that participate on JV and varsity sports, where the competition is a little bit more rigorous, the schedule is a little bit more involved. The majority of our modified athletes are able to participate in clubs as well. One of the things we do to combat just that, and we've run into that over the years on a number of occasions, we have a couple of clubs that meet during lunch periods, specifically because we couldn't get the enrollment that we wanted. In particular, our peer leadership club meets during lunches. But in addition to that, we've worked out with all of our coaches that aside from game day, where particularly for traveling teams where we don't have a lot of control over that, that our student athletes are able to come and participate in club activities prior to going off to their practices. We've tried to balance that as much as we could. You know, we do have, again, you know, we do have a declining population, and here we are adding 4 more clubs to what we're already offering. But we find that the number of offerings, particularly for our 6th grade students that aren't able to participate in interscholastic athletics, they populate a lot of our clubs as well as the intramural program.
I had a follow-up too. I had a couple of questions at the last meeting about the grant for the library program. I don't know where they forwarded to or not, or not really.
I forwarded them to our librarian who wrote the grant, and she's preparing responses to
Oh,
those,
okay,
so-
great. Okay, then we'll just wait
Yep.
for that. All right.
From the high school, Dr. Davenport provided me with a few notes. So a rock skip through the high school. Some BLPT news. BLPT is in the process of reviewing the results from our annual senior exit survey in order to help identify objectives for school improvement for the year. In addition, the BLPT is exploring a day of service pilot for 9th grade students to help support them in our community service program. Members of the BLPT have noted that it can be sometimes difficult for 9th grade students to earn community service hours. I think this is an effort to rectify that. Open house. The high school held their open house on September 26th. It was well attended. We handed out about half of our student schedules, which is consistent with previous years. Took some time in the opening assembly to review the Dignity for All Students Act for parents. Our students will receive their Dignity Act training in the coming weeks. In guidance news, at the end of the month, the guidance department will begin our review of the current program of studies, as well as new course suggestions. Our target is to have complete course programs finished by the end of January in order to begin the scheduling process. And since our last report, students in college and careers classes have been visited by admissions representatives from over 20 colleges. The PSAT was administered at Rhinebeck High School on Saturday, October 19th. And in other PSAT news, 6 students were named as commended students for their performance on last year's PSAT. Parent meetings with guidance counselors. Tomorrow night, we will conclude our guidance meetings for parents with a presentation for the parents of freshmen and sophomores. Counselors review graduation requirements, the features of our guidance program in relation to college and career planning, and the milestones of the transition into high school. Race to the top update. Thanks to the flexibility and support of BMS. Nice to thank myself. We were able to administer our NWEA math assessment in ELA and in math. High school faculty are completing their student learning objective plans as we speak over the course of the next couple of weeks for review. Looking ahead, on Friday, the Diversity Club will host the Men in Pink campaign in order to promote breast cancer awareness. On November 6th, the high school chorus travels to New York City to attend a performance of the musical Big Fish. On November 20th, the 10th grade will travel to SUNY New Paltz to attend a production of Macbeth. And finally, on November 21st, and I'm excited about this as well, the GSA, in collaboration with the BMS Student Council, will be sponsoring our first joint talent show. So that'll be November 21st. Middle school and high school.
What's GSA? Girl Scouts of America, I know, what's GSA?
Gay Straight Alliance.
Oh, Gay Straight Alliance, sorry.
No, I was just
Question?
Gay
I thought it was
Straight
GLBT.
Alliance. No, Gay Straight Alliance.
Questions?
Okay. Thank you, John. All right, so we'll move on to board committee reports. We have several. We'll start with communications.
Okay, so some of this is old news based on our last board meeting. Spoke about the early retirement issue and getting word out to the community about our thoughts on that, which Joe has done, both on the website and in letters to CLS parents. The policy committee had been working on the concerns FAQ for a while, and the communications committee said that we would take it on. Did we go over this last time? Feels like we did. We talked about In Bloom, which is a program about, Joe, you can help me through this, student information. The State Ed Department has required that schools choose one of 3 parent portals to share information about student, all sorts of student information, and we, Rhinebeck, only provide the mandated information that the SED requires. They are actually contracting with In Bloom, not us. And the question, it really becomes a question of student privacy and our control or not over that. We talked about community open houses, sort of coffee with the board, informal meetings. Our parents and other community members can come and talk to us about just what's on their mind, their concerns, their ideas, and we have come up with a couple of dates, which is on the second page of the notes. In the fall, we targeted November 13th, and we're hoping that we can get board support to do a morning and an evening session, so that, you know, parents can come as is easier for them. And if the board agrees to do it, then we'll put out some communication to our parents about, you know, come and chat with us to have a cup of coffee. The other date we came up with for spring, which of course is tentative, is March 26th. It seemed to be a good time before, you know, the heavy-duty budget stuff gets going, and parents can share their ideas about what's important to them. Also, a morning and evening session, so we're figuring, you know, an hour and a half or 2. So the board approves, then we can move ahead with those days.
Yeah, we don't need the entire board or even necessarily a quorum of the board, but we would be good to have at least 2 or 3 board members who would be there. And as we've conceptualized it, you know, there wouldn't be a program. It would be just an informal opportunity to meet and chat with board members, similar to what we do with the staff each fall, where we have a morning coffee with the staff, and we did that. I mean, just not to get too far ahead of the program, but you know, in terms of good news, I thought that was a really rather successful, good, you know, support on good attendance on the part of the board, and I thought very good attendance on the part of the staff this year, and lots of good conversation as I was either participating or eavesdropping. So thank you for those of you who were able to participate, and the committee is seeing this as kind of an extension beyond the staff into the community, to open it up to parents who might want to meet their board members, discuss issues with them.
Lisa?
Are you looking for, you're not looking for a formal adoption by the board?
No, we want to make sure that there's a critical mass of board members who are able to attend each of the sessions. Otherwise, doing something like that without board members is...
Do you want to solicit that this evening?
I could solicit it this evening. You can see me after the meeting and let me know, yes, I'd be interested. I'm available on November 13th in the morning or in the evening, and then we'll tally them up and see what we have, and then the next step would be to do some outreach to the parent community and let them know what's going to be happening and when, and so we'll need to do that within the next week or so, and November 13th will be here before we know it. So
okay. Policy committee?
I did those minutes, so I'll just talk briefly. That the policy committee reviewed 7 draft policies addressed to special education that had been identified by the district's internal auditor as being either missing or not prominently enough available in the policies for their preference. And the committee had some questions, which we've asked Joe to follow up with Richard Zipp and District Legal Counsel, and we'll take that up again at the next meeting. We are also going to follow up on a suggestion that was made last year about developing a new policy on employee borrowing of district equipment, and we're also looking to legal counsel for potential draft policy to review on that. We'll see, at some point, we hope to see something. And then the big project that the committee has agreed to take on this year is to begin a comprehensive review of the district's policies, starting at, appropriately enough, the 0000 series. So we're going to take on the first 10 of those at the next meeting. And when I say take on, what I mean is we're going to review them. We're going to talk about what we think it needs to be looked at, if anything. And we'll use that as the starting point in what is probably going to be a multi-year process, considering how many policies this district has, unless we are incredibly efficient. Any questions? Yes.
Is the goal of review to check for redundancies or things that are outmoded by later policy adoption, or coming into accordance with new legal considerations? I'm just curious what the
answer is yes.
All of the above.
All of the above, and
okay.
Probably other things as well. Quite a number of years ago, the district did a comprehensive review of its then existing policies and actually used an outside contractor to assist in that process. The committee has decided that we are going to try to do this in-house. And we'll see how it goes. If we find that it's not feasible, then we'll revisit whether or not we should go outside for assistance. But right now, we want to see if we can avoid that.
I mean, in all fairness, I think there's certain limitations toward doing it in-house. If it's going to go beyond, let's read this series of policies and make sure that, on a very basic level, make sure that the board members understand what's in there. If you read your own policy and you're saying, I really don't quite get what that says, then there's an issue to explore further. In terms of our having the expertise within that committee, in spite of the backgrounds of the members of that committee in education law, to say, hey, there's an update we need, that's something where I think if we start to get that sense or that feeling like, we really need that more than anything else, then I think that'll be pointing us towards using an outside group that does this kind of thing for a living, that knows what's outdated, what isn't, because I don't think we're in a very good position to make that determination. I know I'm not, and you really need, I think, somebody who specializes in education law to say, there's a hole in that policy, you're missing something in that section that you need to add, and that's something we're going to have to, I think we need to seek outside assistance. That's a much bigger, but no less time-consuming project, because the last time we did that, it took that committee literally, I would say, close to 4 years to take somebody else's breakdown of our policies, read each one, tweak them the way we felt that they should be tweaked for Rhinebeck. So it's a big commitment no matter how you do it. I think there are resource issues with doing it in-house versus getting some outside help. So I think we're going to dip our toe in the water and see kind of what our sense is after a little while.
Can you use NYSBA's policy department?
Not for free.
Okay, all right.
They're one of the agencies that is in the business of doing that. There's at least one or two BOCES across the state that have that kind of service as well. So.
All right, any other questions for policy? Okay. Finance Committee?
Sure. Deirdre actually did the minutes, and she's not here, so I'll present them. We covered a lot of territory. Briefly, the Affordable Care Act, and we reviewed that and how it will affect the school district. It really goes into effect in 2014. And our biggest obstacle will be to figure out if any of our per diem substitutes are working more than 30 hours a week, in which case they would qualify for health care, which is sort of a tricky situation because they're not contractual for the following year to work more than that when you're offering them full-time benefits. But we're tackling that, as is the rest of the state and country. The STAR exemption registration, we went over ways to remind the public once again that they have to re-register for a STAR exemption. The state had sent a letter to every household by mail, and we discussed that we would put an ad in the local media.
A press release.
Press release, an ad, press release. Just reminding people once again to get their STAR application in. There's, when we repurchased our bonds last year, we have to provide information about the demographics of the community, employment, the biggest employers in Rhinebeck. So Tom presented us with an overview of that and who our biggest taxpayers are. And then we followed up on the food service audit, which has changed again apparently since our last meeting. But the point of sale system has been purchased. That'll be the biggest change this year, and the cost was a lot less than originally estimated. The cost was under $11,000 with annual cost being $4,000. It does have the ability for inventory tracking. That will not be started until next year. And we talked about ways where the management of the food program will be reorganized and changed, and with a plan to come back in December and January with more information of what sales are like, what is selling specifically, the cost of meals, and financially how we're doing by January. Follow-up agenda will be continued food service program, and we'll start working on the budget in December as well.
Okay, questions? Okay, audit committee?
It's me again. We had a nice meeting with Steve Bangert, who was hired last March as our claims auditor. He was great to take the time to sort of go through his typical process for auditing our claims. He spoke very highly of our process, and there will always be clerical errors, but there are lots of checks and balances to catch all of those. We went through some typical claims packets and talked about different situations that may occur, and he told us how he manages those. And he's happy to be sitting here in the building so that he can get issues resolved quickly. That was not the case in the past. And we talked a little bit about blanket purchase orders for things like utilities and things where we have sort of an annual expenditure, monthly expenditure. And it had been recommended by past auditors, and he is also recommending that we have sort of a running balance on the claims reports for the business office and the auditor, so that we can see how we're drawing down our budgeted numbers, and the audit committee was in support of doing that. So the business office and the claims auditor didn't have to do a lot of backtracking. We also talked about reimbursements and the appropriate time limits, if any, on reimbursements. He suggested that 1 year from claim should be appropriate, or 60 days from the end of the school calendar. It's just hard when you get a claim from a teacher for something that they did a year and a half ago, and then you sort of have to pay it out. It's just not on the right set of books, and so we thought that perhaps policy might, in your spare time, look at what process or policy should be in place for reimbursements. We also talked about procedures for data input for accounts payable and the treasurer, and thought that perhaps, access to different parts of the software should be on a need-to-know basis. And Tom has been looking at other new softwares, more current software, and is keeping an eye toward those sorts of safeguards. The committee reviewed their self-assessment from last year. Diane went through everybody's ideas about how the committee did last year. And it sparked a conversation about succession plans for our committee in particular, but in general for all committees. And specific, sort of who keeps the master book and how does a new committee follow the work consistently moving forward. So it's a conversation I think that the board needs to have on a board level, because it's, I got nominated as the new chair of this committee, and Diane handed me 3 notebooks and said, here you go, have fun. So I don't, there's, I'm sure, many different ways that different boards tackle this problem, but just in terms of consistency and that sort of thing, I think it's worth getting some feedback from the whole group about what we can do about those things. So, if anybody has any thoughts on that topic.
Lisa.
I just wanted to highlight one thing, since I'm on both audit and policy, that we're asking the administration to consult with the district's council to see if they have a sample policy on the reimbursements that they can present to the policy committee, so that the policy committee can take up. Thank you.
So I'll follow up on the self-assessment. Just the audit committee is different than any other committee in that there's not a level of administration to run it and keep track of the information and remind you to do things, and therefore it gets a little bit tricky when board members change and just keeping track of information. So we could just keep going along the way we have been going, which has varied a lot from year to year. Or we could think about ways to do it better. Even something as simple as having our fabulous new Board of Ed clerk have a master copy of some of the information.
Welcome to the fire.
An archive within the school district, so that it's not in my living room or
you don't have to be lost.
a past board member's trunk of the car. Because most of it's confidential information as well.
Lisa.
And in fact, one of the things that we had a discussion about, although reached no conclusion about, was the idea, not just within the audit committee, but the idea of possibly having a committee clerk who keeps the minutes of all the committees. I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages to that idea, but one major advantage would be exactly what both Laura and Diane are talking about. That is consistency of record keeping and institutional memory across years and boards and committee members. So that's something that the board should consider whether it wants to think further about. That would probably be a multi-month discussion, and there'd have to be a budget component to that as well.
Anything else for audit committee? Okay. I believe we
So,
have
Good
just
curriculum.
how should we follow that up as the audit committee, since we're the only three that spoke?
I think it'd be,
Good.
I think it'd be great if you brought a proposal about this to us. Don't you?
Well, yeah, along that line, maybe the next time the audit committee meets, you can flesh out the concept
Yeah.
and then report to the full board specifically about that, including what the resource implications
Right.
might be.
Okay.
All right, curriculum committee?
An impressive job, I will say. And you'd hate to give that to a clerical employee, wouldn't you? I mean, come on.
It was a fluke, sure, but basically we spent,
I don't think
It's 4.3.3. It's in your book.
Oh, it's in the book.
Yeah. No?
It didn't make that.
make the book. Anyway,
I go from 4.3.2 to 4.3.
on memory.
I don't think the book is pretty capital.
Most of our, the curriculum committee went over Marvin's presentation.
Was it my
today.
book, but,
Wasn't in my book either, but mostly we went over the presentation today. That took a large part of the meeting. And then, you have them in your book? No. You have them in your, you going by?
I had them, but,
By memory.
Do you want to give your copy to Diane so
So
she
she
can
can read
remember?
it?
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's the ticket. Sorry, Diane, I didn't realize you were fishing.
Okay, then, oh, that's right, we did, the next part of the meeting was talking about the new science standards. Basically, we're waiting for them to come out. They're just past the stage through the state where they're getting feedback, so that's done, and we're pretty much waiting for them to come out and going forward. We did talk a little bit about how that might look at the chancellor and how that could change things, but until they come out, we're kind of in a waiting pattern. And then the last part, we talked about the earth science, the pros and cons on that, accelerated math, foreign language in the middle school, and how our parents are informed of that, and what that means, and if they're, even though they get notification about it, do they really understand what it means for their child? So we talked a little bit about that, and the possibility of maybe adding some type of parent meeting in the middle school, like they have in the high school for the different grade levels, so that parents could really ask questions and understand some of these things that come up.
Questions?
Did Marvin mention in the new science core curriculum whether earth science is going to be a state requirement and not just a local requirement anymore?
We talked about it a little bit, I really don't know.
Don't know yet.
So they're
It could
redefining
change, but
the,
It could change.
they're
Until
redefining
it
the
comes out, I don't
sciences
know.
as they're taught. There are
Right.
4 categories of the sciences. Yeah.
So we don't know exactly
Don't
how it
really.
might impact
Exactly.
the curriculum that we have developed here or not.
It could
but-
change everything.
Yep.
But,
Including when it gets delivered.
Yeah.
right.
Any other questions?
I mean, excuse me, the comment period for that at the state level just ended, so they haven't actually rolled out a final document to us, so we're going to be tracking it here during the coming year. But I think we're well aware of the fact that depending on how it's put together, it could have a significant impact on what we teach, when and how, or little impact. I mean, we just don't know at this point, so.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So we'll move on to New York State School Board Recognition Week.
Yeah, this probably will be the quickest item on the agenda, and it should probably be the longest item on the agenda. But the week of October 28th through November 1st has been proclaimed by our governor as School Board Recognition Week. It does coincide with the annual New York State School Boards Association conference and convention. You know, it is recognition of an awful lot of work that all of you do at no compensation except for the gratification that doing community service gives people, and you are all
That and the munchkins.
yeah, that too, but and water, spring water, but you know, it should be recognized publicly that Board of Education members everywhere, and this board is no exception, put in a lot of work reading, preparing, not to mention sitting here for several hours twice a month, and numerous other committee meetings, and doing all sorts of work that is not always the most pleasurable, but is for one of the best causes that I would say any of us could think about, and that's helping our kids and our community to become better educated citizens. So thank you for all you do. Have a munchkin on us. And we still have a long agenda, so I won't belabor the point.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go into the comment section. First, good news.
I have a couple, I think. One, it was in the Poughkeepsie Journal, at the high school, the Rhinebeck Respect, the first recipients, there was a little blurb in the journal. I forgot to bring it to say the kids' names, but so that was nice to see some press. Two, the boys varsity did win tonight, which is good news. And three, just again, the breakfast with the board, it was just nice to see the staff and the conversations and put names to faces in some of our new staff members.
Other good news?
I just want to reiterate how fantastic Breakfast with the Board was, talking with all the faculty members who were so engaged and energized by the curriculum work they've done over the summer. You know, again, a kind of a shout out to Kristen Kogel for undertaking the application process for becoming a master teacher, and for the teachers in the district who are interested, and we hope they'll continue to apply. I think there's still another opening through January 1st for the next round of applications. We have a great tradition, I think, in our district of teachers going that extra mile, undertaking certification like national board certification, which is really the highest standard of professionalism that we should recognize and applaud and really be grateful for in our district. So, good news.
Anyone else? Okay, old business. No old business? Public comment. Anyone wish to make a comment? Okay, other.
I'm gonna just, I guess this could have been old business too. I forwarded an email from a parent, so it's confidential, I won't discuss it, but it does touch upon something the communication committee had talked about earlier, of how do we communicate with students who have left the district, families who have chosen to leave the district. So we could read it, but I think that communications, you know, it'd be nice if that could be an item on the agenda at some point.
Okay. I'll just mention, it was mentioned to me earlier, this flyer was in our board packet about the joint school board and superintendent dinner on November 14th with a topic is questioning the core, show me the data. I guess the dinner is filling up, so if anyone's interested, we should let Donna know as soon as we can to that we want to go. Sounds like a really good topic to try to get in on if anyone has the availability to go. Also, several of us are going to the convention on Thursday. Lisa is actually leaving tomorrow. So after the meeting, maybe we could get together and just go over the travel plan so that we can all be on the same page. Okay. Any other? I don't think so. Okay, so we'll move on to action items. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent agenda? First of all, would anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Okay. Do we have a motion?
So
Lisa?
moved.
Second.
Laura? Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Motion 6.2, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act from Elise Dolce to commence on or about April 12, 2014, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid child care leave through the conclusion of the 2013-14 school year on June 26, 2014.
So moved.
By Lisa?
Second.
By Laura? Discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Motion 6.3, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act from Stephanie Callie to commence on or about March 28, 2014, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid child care leave through June 16, 2014.
So moved.
By Lisa?
Second.
By Laura? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Motion 6.4, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request under the Family and Medical Leave Act from Kristen Kogel to commence on or about February 5th, 2014, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid child care leave through May 5th, 2014.
So moved.
By Lisa?
Second.
By Laura? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Motion 6.5, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the Bulkley Middle School extracurricular activities.
So moved.
By Lisa?
Second.
By Laura? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Motion 6.6, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to certify Joseph Phelan as a qualified lead evaluator of building principals effective October 10th, 2013, having successfully completed the training requirements prescribed in 8 NYCRR 30-2.9B.
So moved.
By Lisa?
Second.
By Laura. Discussion? All those in favor?
Oh, at least.
That's fine.
That's unanimous. That motion passes. Motion 6.7, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional coaches advisors for the 2013-14 school year in accordance with the 2013-14 RTA salary schedule. Boys basketball, varsity, David Airstock, $4,381. Junior varsity, David Jutton, $3,032. Girls basketball, varsity, Mark Berg, $4,381. Junior varsity, Natalie Sirkowski, $3,032.
So moved.
By Lisa?
Second.
By Laura? Discussion?
I have some questions. Thank you, Joe, for your, giving me some of the state ed information about coaching and temporary positions. I'm a little concerned about some of the quality of those rush to get a coach sorts of situations, which I know we have no control over necessarily, but I noticed in the backup information that crew and swim and forgive me, I'm forgetting the last one, are still looking for coaches. And I know, at least in the case, and unfortunately this is my personal experience, that the girls varsity swim team did not get a great coach, and it's a fair amount of money they're getting paid for this position. And in our case, it would seem that we didn't have a teacher that was able to do the job or willing to do the job, and we had to go out and look for people. But what we ended up with was really pretty subpar for the kind of work you would expect from a coach. So I'm concerned that girls, boys, novice crew are going to get stuck in a similar situation as well as the boys swimming, and I'm concerned that we're rushing to get just a body to fill the spot, and I'm not really sure what we can do about that. But
I mean, it's to be honest with you, without speaking to specific coaching positions, it's an ongoing challenge. And I mean, we've thought about this many times in the past, and to be honest with you, the immediate solution would be to say, you know, we won't have that sport. And there are repercussions and impacts to kids by not having a sport. That said, we don't want to put an unqualified coach in any position. That's never what we try to do. And if we can't find somebody who is at least satisfactorily qualified, we wouldn't be recommending somebody. So, I mean, there's always that tension, and it happens every season. And if you're on this board long enough, you'll see that this is just, there aren't people banging the doors down, either from our faculty or from the community, or sometimes from the larger community when we have to go out and advertise for some of these positions, and some of them more so than others. So I would agree with you that it's, from time to time, it is a challenge, and there don't seem to be a lot of good solutions out there. So I hear what you're saying, and I wish I had a pat answer, and if we had an answer, we'd probably be implementing that. But it is an issue, and it happens, it being a difficulty in filling a position. For example, those positions now, we put them out there the same time we put the other positions out there, and then in some cases have gone to the point of taking newspaper advertisements. And like I said, for most of these, given the amount of time one puts in and the amount of money that the stipend is to compensate them, there are just not people kicking the door down wanting to do that. So the alternative doesn't seem to be a very satisfactory alternative either, which is not to have the activity. So I get it, and I think we do the best we can to get the best qualified people we can. Do you hit a home run every time, to use a sports analogy? No, you don't, but I think more often than not, the people that we hire do a reasonably good job. So we can talk about that in personnel. That might be a good place for that conversation, but I won't be bringing a solution with me because I don't, quite frankly, I don't have one.
Diane?
So I have 3 questions about that. I was confused by the New York State law that you sent out. I was always under the impression that it was a negotiable point whether a teacher gets first pick at coaching, but it seems that that's not the case.
No, that's part of the case, but there are also State Education Department regulations that govern certification of coaches. And I mean,
certification.
Yeah, well, you have to be certified or working towards a certification in order to coach. And I think Deirdre's email laid it out. It's pretty cut and dried. I mean, it's the way it is, like it or not. And then there's also the issue of unit work. Just another complication there. And unit work also applies to things that you don't have to be a certified coach for, like clubs and those kinds of things. That's unit work too. So they kind of bleed into each other. But it's more than just a contractual. Well, it's not even contractual language. It's PERB decisions and all that case law that determines who gets preference for certain positions, including coaching positions.
So if you had a certified teacher and a certified coach who was not a teacher, it's up to local negotiations to determine how that plays out?
Not exactly. I mean, it's not really a negotiation. It's, like I said, there's no language specific to that in our contract, but there is a ton of case law that determines who's supposed to get hired and who isn't supposed to get hired. So, and it gets complicated.
Okay. And then someone brought this up to me, which I think is not accurate, but if a club is completely funding their sport, their after-school sport, do they have any special preferences or way of, in other words, don't the same rules apply for the coach?
The source of the funding has nothing, doesn't change anything.
Okay.
The only time it changes anything is if they are in fact not a school sport. At one point, Rhinebeck crew was a community sport, was not a school sport. They could do anything they wanted, period, because they weren't under our purview. They didn't fall under the purview of commissioners' regulations or whatever. So they could run their activity, Northern Dutchess lacrosse. That's not a school sport, so they can do anything they want any way they want. They don't come under that. As soon as an activity becomes a school sport, now that stuff kicks in. But the funding source, if it's a school sport, doesn't really mitigate anything.
And then the last point I'll just bring up for something to us, because it comes up every year, as the athletic director, if the question really is about evaluating our coaches and how effective they are, and if that's really a big concern to the community, you need a certified athletic director on the books to do that.
Well, and you're right, we discussed that ad nauseum for many years.
Right.
For many years, and I think maybe are closer to a solution on that than we have been in past years. But
Okay. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Motion 6.8, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute teachers and substitute non-instructional staff for the 2013-14 school year.
So moved.
By Lisa.
Second.
By Laura. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Motion 6.9, to approve the 2013-14 superintendent's administrative goals.
So moved.
By Lisa.
Second.
By Laura. Diane?
I'd just like to ask to table this to have more time.
Okay.
So moved.
Motion to table by Lisa.
Second.
By Laura. All those in favor of tabling the motion? It's unanimous. That motion passes. So that motion is tabled. Motion 6.10, motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Susan Van Vlack as interim district computer coordinator effective July 1st, 2013.
So moved.
By Lisa.
Second.
By Laura. Any discussion?
I would just mention, as I already did, that this is due to the fact that we're still going through the process of interviewing to hire a director of technology and communication, and there's obviously work that has needed to be done and will still need to be done until we're able to get that person on board. So we need somebody to do it, and at this point she's probably the most appropriate person to, most familiar with the work to get that work done in the interim. So.
Okay. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. Motion 6.11, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the reappointment of part-time food service workers for the 2013-14 school year, effective September 1st, 2013. See attached.
So moved.
By Lisa.
Second.
By Laura. Any discussion? Lisa?
Can you just explain the process of how this motion comes to us? Why is it necessary to reappoint these food service workers?
Yeah, I can. All part-time employees must be reappointed each year. They typically come to the board at the reorganization meeting or sometime during the summer. I forget why we didn't bring these cafeteria workers forward, but I mean, normally we would, all of the other part-time instructional and non-instructional employees were appointed back in the summertime, and for some reason we missed the cafeteria workers. So
We weren't exactly sure what their work schedule was going to be like at the beginning of July during the reorganization meeting, so we had planned to put it off till later in the summer, but then food service director had to take a leave and
things got complicated, and so we need to do that just because they need to be reappointed. All part-timers are only annual employees. They're not probationary or permanent employees.
So would this appointment be retroactive to the beginning of the school year?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why it says for the 2013-14 school year, effective September 1, so yes, it's retroactive to the start of the school year.
Okay. All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. Motion 6.12, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the revised school tax bills refunding a total of $1,486.46 in reduction adjustments and to make the appropriate refund to the property owner from the district's tax certiorari reserve.
So moved.
By Lisa.
Second?
By Laura. Discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. Motion 6.13, upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve Mary Rose McCarthy as modified volleyball coach for the 2013-14 school year, prorated effective October 23rd, 2013, in accordance with the 2013-14 RTA salary schedule.
So moved.
By Lisa.
Second.
By Laura. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. Do we have anything for executive session?
I don't.
Okay. And a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Lisa.
Second.
By Laura. All those in favor? Thank you, everyone.